But God forgives us our weaknesses so long as we...
So long as we what? I haven't seen a sign of God lately. I mean, is he even listening?
Well, maybe his silence is essential to our free will.
I think that there has been a change in the basics of human nature. Something old, brutal, and hellish is here.
I don't think that you're crazy to think that.
You sense it. Nobody can do anything about it. It's like the darkness that hangs in the air even when it's sunny and light. It's like God just locked up and left. Adios.
And so what if he did, Lois? What if he's gone? What if that's exactly what he's done? Big Daddy's left and gone on a business trip, so we have the codes. We know the rules that goodness is governed by. And maybe this is his way of telling us that it's time that we figure this shit out on our own.
He didn't just leave, Father. He left the keys to the candy store to the devil.
Happy heresy. Then, yes, I hope you like that clip since it is the season of the witch. And some of you may be wondering, where is it from? That is from the Hulu series Grotesqueria. And it's so far, it's, excuse me, it's very entertaining. And again, it brings up some powerful philosophical issues. Certainly some Gnostic issues, as you saw there. And hopefully, or when you see it, hopefully you certain powers that be haven't removed it for copyright reasons. But very, very good show. And what I think is amazing about the show, besides the fact that it is extremely ultra violent, gross, and graphic. And every year I say, I'm not going to do this anymore because they keep pushing the envelope. And every year it's a season I am watching horror movies and shows. I can't help it. But of all people that's in this very violent and visceral show, Travis Kelce is in the show. Now, why is Mr. Taylor Swift in this show? I don't know. You conspiracy and symbologists can figure that one out. I have to admit that he does a good job acting in the role he's acting, so I wouldn't mind seeing him some more. But yes, that is Grotesqueria, and it's got, again, powerful themes. We do have the codes. We are humanity, whether the gods or the animals are doing their things. We as human have our roles, and sometimes you do wonder, well, maybe God has left. Who's here? Who's in charge of this insane asylum? I don't know. Maybe it's like the Zoroastrian Zervanites who Zervan, thanks to Mithra, you've got Ahriman and Ahura Mazda fighting, and he gives each god 1,000 years to rule the world. Maybe we're still with Kali and Ahriman. Who knows? Speculation. But anyway, my name is Miguel Connor. I am your Pompatus of Gnosis. Thank you very much for coming on this Saturday night. I am very excited to be joined at the Virtual Alexandria by someone who certainly has the codes, has been working very hard on the codes and separating the light and the darkness, and that is Alicen Gray. Alicen, thanks for coming.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really glad you perceive me that way, as having the codes. I I hope everyone who's listening finds what we talk about today very valuable in that sense.
I have no doubt. I have enjoyed your work and your ideas, and they're certainly in line with this podcast and much of what's going on today. And with us too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm still debugging the codes. But yeah, I figured out where that source of darkness that the priest is talking about. It's called the 2024 elections.
Oh my God, yeah.
Definitely. God,
Yeah.
talk about darkness.
It's coming too quickly. Like time feels like it's accelerating.
Oh,
does.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, stay sane, people. It's a big universe. Everything that's happened is part of a grand design. In fact, Alicen will share how she's been swept away for a long time in these grand designs, but how to navigate. And even today, I was thinking, the world has gone crazy. I think the priest and the lady are right, because I was thinking today, you know what? Let's say I don't even know who Vance would vote for, and I realized I don't even care. If Vance said I'm going to vote for Trump or Kamala or any of the third party candidates, I'd be like, oh, okay, whatever, your
Pat
choice.
Paulson. Remember him?
Yeah. I'm going to vote for Cthulhu. I think he might be the wisest of all the
Flying
creatures. But
spaghetti monster. Same guy.
people, yeah,
Related.
people aren't looking at the big picture and the symbolism and the archetypes moving up above all this distraction. What do you think, Alicen? Yeah, most of what we see in the news feeds and streams and the media it's ultimately a distraction from a bigger picture.
Oh yeah, I tell people, I actually have a shirt that says there's like 3 check boxes. One is Democratic Party, one is Republican Party, and the final one is God's free energy empire. And then I check that box on my ballot. I am only voting for a world of free energy where no human being has the right to rule over any other human being. I just fundamentally oppose that whole premise. And so I don't foresee myself voting at all. I think we vote with our energy. I think we vote with our actions and shift the culture that way. That's been a huge contemplation for me. You know, how much of our world that we're experiencing collectively is an after effect or an after image of what happened in here first. And I've definitely experienced that individually. But with this Helene thing that just happened, which I was in the middle of when I was in Nashville, it became more clear to me than ever how a collective can create a bigger picture all at the same time. And so now I find myself very fascinated and constantly contemplating how does the collective work? Because it's hard enough to have self-knowledge, right? And just know what's going on in your own subconscious, but on the collective subconscious level, forget it. It's enough to be crazy making, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, the most rewarding journey is the inner journey. That is an odyssey. It's a Tolkien novel in itself. So, and that's what we are in this world meant to do. So don't sweat all the superficial stuff, or just know it's all a story. It's all a narrative. It's all a fiction, like reality. So it's you mentioned Helena. Well, why don't we start there? I know we were chatting, getting the interview there, and then I'm like, I have like 3 people. I have close friends who live in Nashville, still talking to them in that area, and my jaw drops every time I talk to. But I remember pulling up your Instagram. You're with some friends on top of some ruins, and you're talking, we survived, but you had this really horrible news about people who dared the roads and sadly didn't make us. But tell us a little bit about that experience. It's incredible.
Yeah, I am very, very fortunate that I wasn't personally physically harmed and my property's okay, my car's okay. So I didn't lose nearly as much as other people did. However, the way it was very disturbing was so I was living on this commune at the top of a mountain in Swannanoa. And the storm was getting crazy. It was really intense winds, really intense rain. So I was just safe in my Airstream with my cat, and I was like, everything's fine. And as the storm got more intense and the rain was running across our land in a way that I thought maybe might lead to some landslides, I decided to go to the central house with everyone else. And so we're talking and hanging out. And then we get a knock on the door after the peak of the storm ended and it was starting to calm down. We got a knock on the door from our up mountain neighbor. And he told us that he found a man hanging upside down the road from us. There was a slope of dirt alongside the mountain road. And so there had been a landslide and it wiped out the road. The whole house just slid down the mountain and unfortunately killed his wife inside of the rubble. And then the man, we're assuming that on the way down, as the house was going down, he got crushed and pressed into the mud. So he was hanging upside down that way. And a bunch of neighbors got called together to try to help him, and he just was too broken. And unfortunately, we witnessed him die. And that was day 1. And I've never watched anyone die before. It was very disturbing, I think. And then, the rain continued and the mud was like continuing to like flow through our land. And there's always that thought in the back of your mind of like, what if our house has a landslide next? So we're in that environment. Thankfully, we had lots of food, lots of water. Like, I find myself, I've never been in a disaster before. I keep thinking like, oh, I had no reason to be scared. And yet my heart was like pounding the entire few days we were there. I've just never experienced anything like this. And when we went down to the main street, it was just destruction, catastrophic destruction. Like this entire highway just like crumbled into the river. And yeah, I've never ever seen anything like it. I hope I never do again. But what was outstanding to me personally, which, I know not everyone has this kind of experience. So this is where I kind of veer off into a strange place with this experience. It felt like an initiation. It felt like a veil got ripped off of reality, and I could suddenly see things in a metaphysical sense that I couldn't see before, including that feeling I was alluding to before of there being a collective sort of co-creation happening subconsciously. And I know how controversial and politically incorrect of a statement that is, especially in the face of so much death. But I think this is the kind of place where I can say something like that. Yeah, it was very clear to me, clearer than ever before, that even though we were all personally experiencing this disaster through our own filters, our own lenses, our own personal kaleidoscope, there was also the collective going through it together. And it was something that had to do with all of us very equally. And spiritually, so much was getting dredged up. And even to this day, has it been 2 weeks now that since the peak of the storm? Even more stuff is getting dredged up as a result of this disaster, like stuff in friendships and other relationships in my life. And it's like, this is not just some physical, natural phenomenon. This is a very, very profoundly spiritual phenomenon, that this whole idea of a hurricane. And I explored that in some of my writing on Substack. When I was there and we had no cell service, no internet, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go inward and try to uncover ancestral memories of hurricanes, because on my dad's side, I'm Puerto Rican. So hurricanes were central to their culture. They even had a Zemi named Guabanchex, I think is how you pronounce it, who was the goddess of hurricanes and volcanoes and earthquakes. And I went inward and I asked to be shown what exactly she is, what her function is, and how we're supposed to interact with her. And basically what I was shown was that while on the surface it looks so chaotic, it is actually a profoundly precise goddess, like or force of consciousness that puts you exactly where your karmic trajectory was going to put you anyway, but it just accelerates it. So it's this giant spiral accelerator that just picks you up and throws you karmically where you were supposed to go, and you have to face whatever you've been trying not to face. And that was true for every single person I was dealing with during this storm. We all had stuff come up, like very personal stuff that had nothing to do with the hurricane, but needed to be dealt with right now. And so that was what I came away with after this experience, like this new understanding of just what is meant by we are nature,
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, things happen on different levels, same as it ever was. I mean, you've been open about things like whether you're breaking up your boyfriend, or whether I walk outside. There's different levels of reality, and the universe is speaking with a message. So what you went through was certainly very intense. And as we spoke, I could relate. I lived in Houston for a long time, so I know the thing of looking out your window and everything is floating by. You're driving and the water's coming to your window. You're trying to get to some store or friend, and you're just, the winds, the storm. But obviously, Houston obviously has the infrastructure and manpower to take these, which it does all the time. Were you guys just caught by surprise, or what happened? It really wasn't.
Yeah, no one thought, because while we were up there on the mountain, we didn't know that at that moment, while we were hanging out and chilling, at the base of our mountain was 8 feet of river water, just like sweeping cars down the streets, sweeping buildings down the street practically. It was intense. And and on that note of it being something we weren't prepared for. I was even talking with a friend, the kind of friend I could say anything to, like nothing's, offensive. I was saying, like, something I think about a lot is our architecture and how it reflects our state of consciousness. And
Mhm.
I want to be very careful saying this. I think even the fact that the architecture was not prepared for a disaster of this nature kind of betrays some degree of disconnectedness from the
Mhm.
power of nature, like not really understanding the kinds of things that can happen. And of course, there would be people who say, well, this wasn't nature, this was weather modification. But
Yeah, yeah,
no, I mean,
yeah.
even so, I mean, then that's a whole other conversation about how we collectively give our power away to
Right.
if it's true that there are some elite controllers in the shadows making such technology. Why were they even able to get to that point of power if not for our collective consent, even subconsciously, even
Yeah.
coercively?
Yeah, and if it was climate change, same conversation. Again, why are we taking ourselves to the brink and back to the drug? Why are we letting some mad gods be in control of our lives? Because
Yes.
whether it's Zeus or some oligarch, it all ends the same, right? Destruction. Yeah,
Mhm.
we pay the price.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so much to be said about personal power in this conversation. In fact, I was very happy to see a few people, instead of sharing like weather modification, fear mongering, were instead sharing ancient knowledge about how people used to do weather rituals, weather dances, weather
mm,
songs, and actually kind of influence or shape the storms that would be happening around them, subdue the storms. I really that's a big part of my whole platform actually is human psychic and psionic potential.
right.
And why is it that collectively we all used to know we could do this stuff, and now it's like, wow, you're schizophrenic, you know what I mean? Like, it's, how did we get here? How did we get here to being okay with saying the technology has the power, but thinking it's crazy to say our spirits have even greater power to influence reality? I'm a stickler about this stuff. I don't concede any ground to giving technology any kind of power that we don't have.
Yeah, well, isn't it as simple as they want to separate us from our source, from nature, from the goddess, from our intrinsic divine spark? Because it's easier to control us that way, and
Mm.
then it's easier to get us into this cult of the death, this
And we can't control
nihilistic
them.
material.
See,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the
Lead
problem. If we were powerful, they'd have to be worried. They couldn't
exactly.
perpetrate, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And we have to consent to the perception of ourselves as powerless in order for them to be able to do any of this stuff. Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
why I think it's one of the most taboo things to even suggest that we are gods or have godlike potential. I'm iffy on how to express that exactly, because I do think the word God has like distinguishing qualities. Like, I can't part the ocean right now at will, but I think humans have the capacity to get there with their development of psionic power. Um,
Right.
so I would say we are like potential gods or embryonic gods or something to that effect. But I think step one to even starting to see the kind of power that is dormant within us is accepting that it's there and giving ourselves permission to embrace it. I think one of the biggest taboos in this world is talking about human psionic potential. Like, there's just this automatic like shutting down of conversations like that. Like, oh, that's crazy. That's narcissistic. That's vain. It's like, why would it ever be wrong for people to just be powerful? I've never been convinced that there's anything wrong with these conversations.
Yeah, and now they're scientific. I mean, astral travel, near-death experience, psi capabilities. I mean, the data is there and it is sound. Just pick up a Mitch Horowitz book and or Colin Wilson, you'll get all the scientific facts there. But I think maybe they're knowing this and they're like, this is a time when we need to prune, we need to really bring the hammer down because, like you said, if we wake up they're going to be in trouble because we will be united. I mean, even something like, um, let's say where you are, I remember reading this research by Richard Smalley. He said there was this experiment where they would get 20, 30 people meditating on a neighborhood in a city, wherever they meditated, the crime went down statistically. And
Yes.
I mean, this is scientific. So
Yep. I cite that study all the time, and
cool.
I've seen smaller YouTube creators do their own versions of those experiments. There's this one, I don't know if his name was Wayne J. Bush or something on YouTube.
Yeah, Wayne Bush.
Yeah, he his city, if I'm remembering who it was, his city was going through a drought for a long time, and like plants were dying and it was pretty dire, and he asked his YouTube following to just concentrate on the image of it raining heavily in his area. And then I think within 3 days of him asking people to do that regularly, it started downpouring after this huge drought. And I live for stuff like that. That's the stuff that keeps me going, and I'm always trying to ask people to like do stuff like that with me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to sit around afraid of the Illuminati. Like, I want to do something.
No, we all have so much power. We just don't realize it. We've forgotten, each one of us. We all have a purpose, a destiny, a talent, a gift, and again, all this power. I mean, and again, this is part of nature. If a dog can detect an earthquake 8 hours away, that's nothing. It's just instinct. And you see animals again, they have this collective that helps the species powers, and they can do things, whether it's the march of the monarch butterfly. Anyway, nature is so full of this stuff. It's
well, you know,
we humans are
something.
different.
I did something like this once, and I'm not sure why this was a particular time, but I was on a workshop in the Big Island of Hawaii, and we were on a boat going on the way to Captain Cook's Cove, and we were supposed to do some snorkeling, but we couldn't snorkel if it was raining. Okay. And it was raining all the way to the Captain Cook's Cove. So the leader of the workshop, who fancied himself a magician, says, "Hey Vance, why don't you make it not rain?" You know, and I think he was like saying it's, you know, as a a poke at me. And I thought to myself, and I thought, "Hey, weather gods, will you do this with me?" And they said, "Yeah, okay, it's all right, I'll do it." So anyway, I asked the weather gods, "Okay, please, clear up the weather around the cove." So we got there, and literally, just as we got there, the clouds parted away in a circle over this cove, and the cove is circular shaped, and we snorkeled for an hour that way. And after the hour, no, this is a true story.
Yeah.
And then right at the end, it started a little raining a little bit, and we got back on the boat. And I don't know what they thought of it, but he says, "All right, make it not rain all the way back." And I looked at him and says, "No, you're not going to manipulate me that way."
Yeah.
That's lovely. And I have a secondhand story very similar to that. I had a friend who, this was during 2020, and there were a lot of protests going on in major cities around the world of the lockdowns, like people gathering in huge spaces, just to say, you can't make us stay home. Like, who are you? And
right.
And I can attest that there were some weird chemtrail things happening over our heads when I would go to protests in New York City. That's where I was at the time. There would be like very strange symbols being drawn in the sky, like sigils and glyphs and stuff. And it seemed like something occult was being done over the crowds. And so I had a friend in London who was reporting the same thing. And she said her and her friends got together in a circle and started meditating on clear skies, and right over their heads, those chemtrails just broke up and dissolved. And
Wow.
I was like, because it works. And that's why I won't entertain all the fear mongering, whether it's about the election or the weather or whatever. Because we ultimately, if we actually do want a better world, it's us who has to create it. Like, we are responsible.
Yeah. I agree. And somebody who was very good at manipulating weather was Elvis. In my book, I think 4 examples, and he was never alone. This is with groupies, family, Memphis Mafia. He could just look up at the sky and he could make clouds part. And it was no big deal to him. If he was out and people were like, "Oh, it's raining, Elvis," he'd be like, "Oh, thank you, I'll take care of it." And he would do this thing he learned, and he would just make the rain stop and the clouds part. So
yeah. Don't rain on my blue suede shoes. Right?
Yeah, exactly. You never had to worry about writing that song. Yeah, that's the one thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love, yeah, we were talking earlier about how so many celebrities have these kinds of powers. Like, was it Jimi Hendrix who was like telepathic and he would speak to his friends telepathically? That's another thing. Like, somebody, it was one of these like huge musicians in that era who,
Bowie believed in that, and he did that, and
oh yeah.
he
Oh,
loved it. Yeah, he could read people's minds. Same with Elvis. Bowie carried a tarot with him.
I've
Uh,
definitely spoken telepathically with loved ones, and I've also seen other people do it right in front of me. And it's like, I've had so many experiences like this in my life of precognition through dreams or just like flashes of insight. I think I had one stint with telekinesis, but I was alone and I can't prove that it happened. So take that for what you will. And so many other examples of like these sorts of powers coming through in a flash. And it's for that reason that I'm always talking about, like, yeah, I put it this way, humans can fly, and I'm here to remind people of that.
mhm.
It just seems logical to me that if all these other little powers are possible, then this one big ultimate freedom of flight must also be possible. So yeah, that's kind of my like fixation, my obsession in my body of work.
Yeah, and definitely check out her Substack. I'll have the links, and she also has a donate if you want to help her financially. She also gave me some links of other places there in that area, which I will put in the show notes. So please give some, because yeah, people are again. I'm talking to my friends, and it's still a complete disaster. It's still a
Mhm.
mess. There's so much, and unfortunately, we live in this era where it's like the news cycle. Now everybody moved to Milton, then
Right.
everybody's going to move to the election, and we forget these things. So let's not forget, because again, not only that's how they take our power, they make us forget, and we forget easily.
Mm.
If we
Oh,
don't forget, we honor them and we can help them.
forgetting, that's such an excellent point. Forgetting is a big part of how power is taken. I think it could be argued that this whole realm operates on us having forgotten how we got here. And
Yeah.
so then that lends itself to us being sort of loosh farmed, as they say. Yeah, but I will say, while you brought up the aftermath of the hurricane again, I am really like heartwarmed, I don't know a better phrase for it, by all the goodness I'm seeing in those areas, people really pulling together. I mean, me and my landmates, it was such a blessing to be with them specifically. We got along so harmoniously. Everyone's different skills came together in like the best possible way for us to take care of each other while we were
Mhm.
stranded. And everything I'm hearing out of Asheville, which is where I'm connected to, is just like people finding huge heavy equipment and machinery for people to build their own roads again because the city's
Yeah.
been so slow, and stuff like that, donating generators for people who have like oxygen tanks and need
Oh,
electricity.
good.
There's so much good that comes out of us, that I don't think is going to get covered on the media, because it discredits the federal agencies that are not doing what they should be doing. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or again, we got to move to the next divide and conquer news story. So, yes. And with us, for those of you just joining, we've got Alicen Gray. She's our first homeless guest. So it's like, so it's nice to talk. Yeah, she's got a shopping cart next to her. No, you are, yeah, you are literally displaced. You are now
I
no
was.
longer, yeah.
Yeah, I'm staying in my family house now. It's funny. The whole experience was so dreamlike. It was truly like being in another dimension. And while I was in Nashville, I adopted my cat,
And your
and
cat's
then
fine.
the cat's fine. Yeah,
Good, good, good.
she was a little pissed at me with all the moving around we did at first, but I think she's figured it out that we're like settled in
Okay,
now.
good,
But
good.
what was so funny was Asheville was already very bizarre and dreamlike for the 4 months I was there. And then during the actual storm, it was truly like being in a liminal dimension. It was like it's so trippy and weird. And then when my parents came to pick me up from where we evacuated to and drove me back home, the next day I woke up in what was my old bed, but my mom redecorated the whole room while I was gone.
Mm.
And it was like, it just almost felt like, oh, so Asheville was a dream. Like I was just here all
Like the
alone.
end of The Wizard of Oz or
But
something.
then, yeah, but then there was a cat next to me, so I guess the cat
Oh.
followed me out of the dream and into Chattanooga.
The Matrix, deja vu. The cat's there for
Yeah.
your deja vu.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. And she's chilling. I kind of hope she makes a little guest appearance at some point while
yeah,
it's
yeah. As
yeah,
everybody knows here, I probably have about 5 cats hiding somewhere in the room.
Oh,
So
I've seen one of them on another episode, so I'm excited to see the others.
yeah, we love animals here, but and I know right now it's probably hard to pick out all the symbolism. I mean, again, I was thinking of
Mm,
Helena, so of course I'm thinking Helena, the moon, Simon Magus's consort, the sorceress, but that's obviously my mythology and Sinks. But
mhm.
and it was a strange name, and it again, it's very hard at the time. I mean, like the other day, Allison, I was thinking, I was meditating, and then I realized I had, those insights where you see, and suddenly you see the entire story of what happened from one end to the other, and you see how there was a providence. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, all this randomness in 2022. I looked and it was a harmonious movement into an action I was meant to take. And I was like, "That is so obvious that this is what the spirits were doing." At the time, I was like, "Oh, randomness and, oh, shit, and this and that," but it was so obvious, but it took a while for me to get it. Do you think, are you seeing any sort of pattern yet, or are you just sort of gonna wait till it comes to you?
Oh yeah, I started seeing the pattern on day 3 because what
Mhm.
what Hurricane brought up,
Yeah.
and that's, my ancestral mythology. What she hurled me into was facing my familial karma, because there's this whole saga, and I explain more on Substack, where this house was something I invested in with my family. So the thing is, like, there were a lot of like verbal agreements that we made in trust that then did not turn out to be in practice like what it was like to own a house with my family. So
Mhm.
then I tried to get out of the mortgage, and the bank was like, no, you can't, because of like there were all these different financial factors. So I kind of ended up stuck with this house on my financial records, like making my debt to income ratio like way too high.
Right.
And it was just like, oh God, like I'll never own my own property. I'll never be able to move on from this family. And like, and then near the end of living together, things really came to a head with my mom, and I estranged myself from her. So when I went to Asheville, it was mainly to get away from her and try to build my own life. And what ended up happening during the storm was, in all these really subtle, precise roundabout ways, I was brought face to face with like, oh, I understand. I have to go back home. I have a karmic debt.
Right.
You can't just run away from that. And I'm not. I hope everyone understands. I'm not saying anyone else who's estranged from a family member, like, you just have to go talk to them. No, that was for me personally.
Yeah.
That was what I discerned was the right course of action. And I came back here, and interestingly, the cat who followed me out of this strange dream, is like the peacemaker in the house. Like, it's very symbolic that like my mom hated black cats. Like, she thought that they were ominous and that it
Wow.
was a sign someone was doing bad witchcraft on you or
Right.
whatever. Obviously, I'm an occultist, so I'm not scared of that shit. So I was like, yeah, bring on the black cat. So I used to joke that Jupiter, my cat, and my mom, the reason Jupiter came into my life in Asheville was because they couldn't exist in the same dimension. Like, this cat
Mm.
could only come into my life after I left my mom. But then now that I'm back here, my mom's obsessed with Jupiter.
Mm.
She's in love with Jupiter, and Jupiter loves her back. And I feel like whatever tension I was expecting to come back home to is just not there. And I do feel like this strange little cat creature, magical being, had something to do with sort of untangling some of that karma for both of us. So yeah, I don't know. That's a very personal. Like, so far, that's what I've deduced about like the purpose of this storm for me as an individual. On the collective, I got in trouble with somebody for suggesting that there was a collective karma that was being addressed. So I want to step very carefully here. But it did feel like there was something, at least in Asheville, something that was being um, worked out on the collective level, where you had this city full of seekers of like
Yeah.
different stripes, like Buddhists and pagans and Christians, and all the different kinds of faiths, everybody searching for the truth. And it seemed like this hurricane really showed us the truth, which is, well, you need each other to survive. So go ahead and experience that right now. And that was what I deduced from it. That's my personal perspective on the matter. But I know not everyone's gonna see it that way, but it seems, I don't know, it just seems so obvious to me. Like it makes so much sense that for Asheville, at least, that was part of like the purpose behind Helene.
Yeah, well, you are right. It is one of the most magical occult places, definitely in the South, easily. So
Mm.
that's where everybody goes. So, and it's a great lesson of the power of the randomness of nature. I mean,
Mm.
we are meant to be connected to nature, but she has her agenda, and it's brutal. There's a darkness and a light to this force. So it's not all, unicorns and rainbows and, oh, I'm going to work on my shadow and do my astrology chart. No, I mean, nature is, it's awe and fear. So,
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we live in a civilization really amounts to us depending on each other in an impersonal level. But when things like this happen, now we see us depending on each other in a personal level, heart
Yeah.
to heart, as
Yes.
opposed to mind to mind.
Mm.
So, so that's a big difference. So that's a big lesson right there.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, connecting at the heart level was definitely not something I was doing with my landmates. They were just kind of like people I lived on the same land with. But then after this, it was like we all fell in love with each other. Like I could suddenly see God in them. Like, wow, these people are so beautiful and so powerful, and I can't believe I didn't see it before, So I would say Helene also felt like a revealer of many things at once, many things, not just like literally physically with like revealing the weaknesses in the infrastructure of our city and stuff, but also spiritually, like revealing so many relationship dynamics that we couldn't see before. And yeah, honestly, I could trip out talking about this one hurricane and the fact that there are people who live in the path of hurricanes and experience this regularly. I mean, you were saying that that was your experience when you lived in Texas, or do
Yeah,
you
in
still live
Houston.
there? In Houston?
No, no, not anymore. It's been a while. Yeah.
Mhm.
But no,
Yeah, I have
yeah.
been thinking, because I tapped into my ancestral memory during this experience. I was thinking, well, I guess everywhere you live in nature, there's gonna be something that you have to deal with, like whether you're living in a hurricane path or in tornado alley, or if you're living in a desert, there's certain things that come with that biosphere. If you're living in a rainforest, there's certain risks and dangers that come with that biosphere, and all of it's going to be reflecting you back to you. And there was a time, I think, where it seems like we had our pockets of developing genetic memory that would like
Mhm.
be on the land for a long time and have a certain karmic trajectory. But in this day and age, so many people live all over the place and not where they have their genetic uh,
Right.
like karmic baggage. So I yeah, I don't even know why I brought that up. I don't even know where to start on like what that entails for us and like the growth of our souls. But I imagine a lot of our modern day confusion stems from just like not being home. Like, you
Right.
know what I mean? Yeah.
Very true, very true. Yes, and if you have a question for Allison, please super chat them so we can get to them. We got a
Super
big crowd tonight. It's Saturday. Usually we have a slow crowd, but yeah, everybody's here to see you. Over 100 people here and there. And you were talking. Yeah, I think the next thing is about we were just talking, and that's chaos. That's
Mm,
something you've worked with. You are a chaos magician
yes.
and you're into chaos theory. So tell us, how did you get started and how does chaos play into it? And of course, people are going to get mad because I'm going to quote that line from Game of Thrones: chaos is a ladder. From
I've never heard that before.
oh, okay, yeah, it's from I forget what was the name of the guy, one of the creeps, Littlefinger. He goes, chaos is a ladder. There's a famous speech games in Game of Thrones about it.
No, well, I mean, intuitively that makes sense. There's, to be cliche, there is an order to chaos that you'll only see if you go looking for it. Because if you just, look at the disorder and are like, oh, I hate this, I want order again, like you're gonna miss the point. So okay, where to start on my journey with chaos theory and how I define myself as a chaos magician. When I was maybe 12 or 14, somewhere around that time, I started becoming obsessed with the word chaos. Like I could actually feel its vibration differently than other words. I was very drawn to it. It felt so strong and like something that was drawing me in. So I started studying it. And at the time, I didn't know what the word gnosis was. I just knew that I was getting insights that I wasn't learning from other people. So it's not like I studied under like Robert Anton Wilson or Austin Osman Spare. It was just like things were coming up from my own internal worlds that were forming this cohesive picture of what chaos is and its function in the universe. And then I wanted to I found out about the symbol called the Chaos Star. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's me. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I was like, I'm looking at myself. So I decided I wanted this tattoo really bad. I planned it for 6 years. So everyone knew I was serious. Like I was telling everyone, I'm going to get this tattoo. And then I got the tattoo. And a few years later, and let me explain something about this tattoo. So it's the thing in my image, which was,
Right.
you guys have seen it. It's the 8 arrows pointing outward from a center. And my idea was that this image suggested that the arrows would always come back to their source, right? So they're always still connected to the center. So that said, a few years later, when I was introduced to Vedic astrology, I found out that my sun is in Punarvasu Nakshatra, which is the portion of the sky ruled by the deity Aditi, whose symbol is the quiver of magical arrows that always return to their source.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I just intuited that for years before I found out that, like, according to Vedic astrology, I am the goddess Aditi in human form. Because
Right.
that's what I love about Vedic astrology, that it's like, it sees the power in people. It's not just like, oh, are you a crabby Cancer? Or like, it's so much deeper and richer than that. So all of that background given about like my intuitive trajectory with chaos, the way I understand it is chaos is essentially the bridge to free energy. And free energy is just that which is not limited, that can't be limited by the laws of physics or anything of that sort. So free energy defies our idea that there has to be a cause and effect, that what goes up must come down, and like all these things we take for granted as being the way things work. Chaos throws that all into question and shows us that actually there is a way that things can work that isn't based on these like cycles or patterns. And so free energy, I joke about, but I'm not joking, wanting to live in a free energy empire. Free energy would basically be the antithesis to the control system.
Right.
The control system of trying to enslave people or make people operate under mind control. Free energy is freedom. It's exactly what it sounds like. Free energy is love. And a society built on or built by free energy would look very, very, very different from this like energy leeching matrix that we think is just how it has to be. So when I call myself a chaos magician, what I'm really saying is I am someone who is personally very seriously invested in studying how to tap into free energy. And so, I recently sort of soft launched the Church of Immortality, which is my personal means of preserving what I believe was Jesus Christ's true message, assuming he was real, which I do. I think he was actually teaching free energy. Like, for example, the story I love to call on for this, to illustrate this, is how he took two fish and 5 loaves of bread, or the other way around.
Yeah, it was one of those, yes.
Yeah, it was one of those. So he took some bread and some fish and then was able to feed 5,000 people.
Right.
So he essentially pulled food out of thin air. That flies in the face of the idea that food has to be grown in the ground and then harvested and then processed and then cooked, and then actually it can be instantaneous. Your true nourishment comes from the ether. It does not come from the physical world, and it is not limited to the laws of physics. And he was showing that food is not physical, ironically, through the vehicle of physical food. And so it's that kind of free energy that he was actively encouraging people to tap into. And unfortunately, a lot of people saw that and were like, oh, well, I guess we'll just worship you instead, and That's not what he said. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Jesus the Christ, and I believe his miracles were a demonstration of what we're capable of when we let go of this idea that things have to work the way they currently work, which is like a dead energy system. Free energy is living energy, and I'm obsessed with it.
That's very interesting. I know, like, the Valentinians used to say Jesus was the perfect human being. This is Valentinus the Gnostic. He said he was in perfect balance, and this
Mhm.
he only his body would regulate itself, so he wouldn't have to sweat or poop or pee. Pardon, but so therefore he didn't have to eat. He was just a perfect,
Mhm.
self-sustaining, the perfect man, which is what's supposed to be. So that it might have been up in the air even back then, Alicen. So,
There are some clues in the Gospels that he didn't eat normal food.
mhm,
He said in one verse, when one of his disciples asked him if he'd eaten something, he said, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about."
mhm,
And given the context of the rest of his life and some of his practices of like eliminating parasites from the body or from the bodies of others, it seems to me that he was in a pranic state of like he could eat, but he didn't have to because he was nourished by the ether and by
mhm,
mana from heaven, as they call it. And
right,
so that's another layer of this like free energy thing. Humans actually don't need to eat. We want to, and we are very accustomed to the point where it's kind of addictive and we think we have to, right? And so
right,
but you know, all of my encounters with breatharians and people living in the pranic state have taught me that actually we are so powerful we don't even need food. And this is the kind of stuff I've like devoted myself to understanding and talking to people about, because if you knew how free you were, like you would like
yeah.
never worry about this stuff again. And I still worry about stuff in life, but I think I'm getting better at not worrying about stuff, you know, because the more I focus on these things that I know to be true, the less worried I am about the state of the world, or like how much power I have within this world, you know?
Wow, so you've met breatharians. I would love to. I've
Yeah.
heard of them, but I've never actually met. My wife studied it for a while, and she was into it, but, just haven't gotten
Yeah.
into it.
I got my breatharian initiation 2, 3 years ago. It was
Mm,
maybe 3 Halloweens ago at this, because it was on Halloween. The veil was very thin, and I took advantage of that to ask,
right.
like, God, like, what is my spiritual path? I'm sick of everyone telling me, like, do this yoga or like do this mantra. Like, I just, what is for me? Right. And then what sprang up instantaneously was this instant revelation of like, eat light, eat light, eat light. That was all I heard, just like reverberating in the atmosphere. And I knew that that meant ultimately, you know, be in a pranic state, and there's going to be a journey to get there. That is my path. And so it lends itself to all these other things I've been mentioning, like free energy and personal power and things like this undoing of the idea that food is where my energy comes from. It's not like nothing in this universe is nourished by food. And I know that's a radical statement, but the breatharians I've encountered to different degrees, like there's some people who just go long times without eating and don't need to eat much.
Right.
There's people who just like fast regularly. So I was fasting weekly for about a year, and then I kind of fell off. So when I got to Asheville, interestingly, so it's time for
Mm,
me to get back on my path. But someone in the comments, which I did not know were a thing until just a few seconds ago, somebody started mentioning parasite cleanse related stuff over here, and that's a big thing you confront on the pranic journey. It's
mm.
a lot of what actually makes us think we're hungry is parasites in our bodies that they're the ones eating. And we don't need to eat
Oh,
nearly as much as we think we do. It's the
so they're
parasites.
pulling the levers, the
Yeah,
chemical switches. Oh, my.
yes. Oh, they are. And
Mm,
in fact, there are
the
some
buggers.
there are some censored verses in the gospels where um Jesus Christ, I think the Geneva Bible still has these verses where there were some people so tormented by demons and possessed by demons that he said they would have to fast, and that was the only cure. And the implication being to starve out the parasites.
Right.
But then those references to fasting were removed in later translations, which is like, interesting. Like who doesn't want us to know how to remove parasites from our bodies? You know what I mean? Or that or the relationship between fasting and demon possession. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, and even I mean, it's not that rare. You look at, for example, movements like the Jains in India, and then the Gnostic Manichaeans were the same way. They would not touch grass. They would have both, again, the Manichaeans and the Jains were you wipe things so they don't step. They hated breathing because they didn't want to breathe and kill bugs. They barely ate, so they lived these ultra ascetics life. The Jains are still around, and they're very known as very holy, intelligent, and really well-adjusted people.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the Jains this morning too, because I knew we'd at some point talk about parasites. And I was thinking how interesting it is that every religion on earth has a sect that attempts to stop causing things to die altogether.
Right.
So the Jains don't want to eat anything that was ever alive, which is such a noble, like, and then there's fruitarians who, you know, they eat fruits because you don't have to kill a fruit. It's just, you know, hanging off the tree. And so there's somewhere, I think, in our collective memory as humans, we understand that we maybe once belonged to a dimension that you might call Eden or the Pleroma or what have you, where death was not a feature of that dimension, and it came in later. So death is actually foreign to us. As much as we may tell ourselves death is necessary or death is inevitable or you just have to embrace it or accept it, whatever, like I think somewhere deep down we know that's not true. And that's why we remain generally disturbed by death. I know not everybody is, but I think the fact that we have to try so hard to accept death says that maybe we aren't supposed to. But that's the immortalist in me talking. So I I know this is where I'm like super fringe, even for like spiritual communities. Like
You're a heretic even among heretics.
Yes. Yes.
Indeed. What do you think, Vance? Do you have questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the idea of, getting away from the matter energy, space-time type of, prison that we're in. So what other kinds of things do you do, Alicen, to, transcend, pierce the veil, so to speak, to try to bring in the 0 point energy into your practice?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And I would say only recently did I put it together that love is free energy. And that is why I believe Jesus was preaching both. You know, he said, the signs of those who believe in me will be that they will love one another and like show my love to the world. And then the other signs will be you'll be able to pick up snakes and be bitten by them and they won't hurt you. And you'll be able to like, you know, tread on scorpions. And so it was like he was positing that love and superpowers are the same, because love is the freest energy and it breaks all karmic ties. It breaks all patterns. And yeah, so I can't say I'm like a master at this because I only just recently realized, oh yeah, love is like really important. But I am trying to practice love more, and for me that looks like radical generosity. So I read this book I really love called The Treasure Principle. I believe it was Randy Alcorn who wrote it, and he put it forward that like the reason Jesus preached so much about wealth and possessions was because if you're still thinking that money is your source of everything you need in life, you are totally missing all the other ways that like provision can be made for you by the universe at large. So it's like once you detach and like just give away what you think is yours, then you'll see how much more comes in seemingly out of nowhere. And I have definitely been experiencing that. The more I just like stop caring about my possessions, like whatever, it's temporary. Nothing in this world is really mine. And that's a big lesson Helene taught me. Like now that I'm more comfortable with like not being too attached to just physical objects, and giving stuff away to people who need it more than I do, I find that like all my needs are met in these very mysterious roundabout ways that maybe I wouldn't have been open to before. So I'm starting to see that as a way to tap into free energy. You know, there is this constant churning exchange of energy going on around us at all times. But when we become rigid and attached to like one way of things coming to us, we sort of like block out all the other channels of reception. So detachment's a big one. And detachment is such a heavy word for me because I think of it as like, oh, monks who've detached from everything and like gone to the mountains to meditate forever.
Right.
Like I don't see myself doing that, but
Then they're attached to meditating in the mountains.
Yeah.
that's true. It's a trap.
Yeah.
It's a trap from Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm going to make myself free by imprisoning myself in a monk cell.
There you go.
Yeah. There's always that shadow lurking around the corner of like, well, why are you really doing this? You know?
So what are your practices? You just contemplation, meditation, or what practices do you do?
I do love to meditate. And not, I mean, there's a million ways to meditate, so that doesn't really narrow it down. But like, I like to ask a question and then see what answers come up within me. And then also, I love paying attention to like, I guess it's like an ongoing mindfulness of like how my inner state then ripples out into something physically manifest. So my state of being, how it lends itself to new people coming into my life, the kinds of conversations that start happening around me and things like that. I wouldn't say I have a traditional spiritual practice. I think fasting was my practice for a while until I fell off that wagon. But yeah, that ongoing mindfulness. I'm into dream work too. That's been, oh man. I don't even know if it's as fruitful as I was hoping it would be. Sometimes I hear people say stuff about like how the archons like use dreams or synchronicities to like fuck with us, and I sometimes with the way my dreams are, I start to wonder if that's true, and I'm like,
Really?
yeah, because like stuff will happen where like even just a few months ago, right before I left for Asheville, I had a dream about this guy. And it was like, he felt like, I don't know, maybe not my soulmate, but he felt like someone very significant who I had profound trust in. And I felt very safe and protected by him in the dream. And then the next day, I walked into a restaurant and I met him. And I was like, whoa, like, and where he's talking to me, like he struck up a conversation with me that felt a little flirty, and I just could not words. Like I like, how do you tell someone, hey, I saw you in my dream last night? And like, you can't. I mean, you can. We have free will,
Yeah.
but I wasn't going to. So I just, it was like, and then I moved to Asheville and I never saw this guy again. It was like, what was the point of that? I mean, then again, I'm back in Chattanooga, so if I was crazy, I would show up at that restaurant and like try again. But I'm not gonna stalk a man at work. So.
That's what social media is for. Stalk him on social media.
If I can find out what his name is, but it's stuff like that it's like, well, what was the point of that dream? What was the point of that precognition? I mean, sure, there's still the future. Something could still unfold.
Yeah, the loop could close somewhere else.
Yeah. So who knows? But it's stuff like that makes me not want to just like throw myself into trusting my dreams just yet. It's like, well, what is this for? Like, what, so I have more questions than answers, I think.
Well, something I think that might work instead, and Jung did write about it. He says the problem with dreams, it is a passive way of talking to your soul or God or the spirits, but there is a risk with some people that it will let in complexes and shadows in and take over. So he advised doing active imagination, like what you're doing, because you're probably more energetic, or you, like you said, you like to go outward. So he said active imagination is more active and gets you to take control of the wheel. So I think that you might want to try that instead.
Oh, okay.
It just occurred to me that maybe the dream was designed to protect you from this person, because if you hadn't had that dream, he probably would have been flirty anyway, and you might have, started a relationship with him that wouldn't be good. So the dream made you alert to his presence. And do you feel like that dream possibly prevented you from talking to him, or taking it a step further?
Ooh. That's a good question.
He's not on a true crime podcast.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Did the dream prevent me from talking to him? I mean, knowing me, if I hadn't had that dream and then I'd met him and he started flirting with me, I wouldn't have flirted back. I think I was just very nervous in general. Like, he was very attractive and I don't think I would have had the courage to talk to him. I think the dream just complicated that, like, and added a layer of meaning that wouldn't have been there before. I don't know. I guess it's just one of those, like, that's another timeline that I am not private.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
to think about.
Yeah.
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 We don't know. And yeah, I wanted to talk about chaos theory and chaos. I think what I like about it, and again, Jungians like Robin Robertson will talk about, is the idea of, yes, there are complex systems and the weather, the universe, there's so many of them, but in this chaos, this randomness we think of this world, there is a harmony and an aesthetic and probably an intelligence that makes sense when you can take a step back, of like the Fibonacci principle, or that's a perfect example. Or why do all toilets in the north go one way? I mean, there's so many examples of chaos theory and the beauty, and of course everybody knows the butterfly effect. And I like it because that's like the hobbits. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. You never know when your little action, your little piece of art, your little helping of a friend, something you say on social, will be the butterfly effect that will unravel things around you, but it will all work out well. And there's this one of my favorite examples is by where is it, right here, Benoit Mandelbrot. I think he's the one who actually started, one of the founders of chaos theory. When he joined IBM back in the day, I'm sure Vance remembers, whenever you'd be on a computer or phone, you'd hear this static. It wasn't like today. And people are like, it's storms, it's dust, it's, broken lines, it's all that. He started to realize that there was always a beep through it. And he realized there was a rhythm, something that was completely random. There was like 3 beeps. In other words, all this dust throughout the world, all these magnetic storms, all these broken lines in the phone, it all just kind of became a harmonious sign. It organized itself. And he couldn't believe that that was possible, because it shouldn't be mathematically possible, but that is, complex systems organize themselves in some sort of aesthetic or message or just new organized world. And I think that's the beauty of chaos theory and chaos. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, someone in the comments said it really nicely. They said, if chaos looks like disorder, it's just because it's happening at a higher order than we can comprehend. Like,
Well
it's,
said.
yeah, I'm butchering how they said it, but that's basically the sentiment. And there's also another comment I want to address.
Sure.
Somebody said, how has she not figured out yet that we are dead? And this person might be, in a twisted way, happy to know that I do believe we are in the land of the dead. I don't think
No,
this is the land of the
no,
living.
that's it. That's a Gnostic
Yeah.
idea. We're in Hades. We
Yeah,
are in Hades.
that's why when I talk about immortality, I mean, I see this world of, like, the laws of physics and cause and effect and what goes up must come down and all of that as dead energy, and free energy is the way out. Like, that's I think that's what's truly meant by Jesus being called the way, the truth, and the life. I mean, he literally showed what life beyond the land of the dead looks like by viscerally embodying free energy, and that's my ultimate goal. I'm not being a savior, that's not my goal, but, like, I mean, embodying free energy, that's endlessly fascinating to me. And I do believe it is true freedom, life. And it's so fascinating how when you start talking about immortality, people get offended. They're like, how dare you suggest that our bodies are supposed to live forever? It's like, it hurts their feelings, which is so strange to observe. I don't know what to make of it, because I love
worldview. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it offends them because so much of their identity, this is generally true of ideologues. If you identify too much with an idea, the moment that idea is destabilized, then your whole identity is destabilized, which means truly the undercurrent there is a fear of annihilation. So
Yes, yes.
there's a real danger to having any belief system that comes from somebody else that isn't self-sourced through gnosis. And you know, if it's coming from outside, from some other teacher, from some other authority, then, or if it's just implied by your culture, then the more you identify with it, the weaker your sense of self actually is, and the more you lend yourself to just reality collapse. And that's why I'm so big on like just kind of figuring things out from within myself, rather than asking like Google or the outer world in some way.
Right.
Like, so what do angel numbers mean? Like, that's for me to find out in my inner world, right? Like 1111 doesn't mean to me what it's going to mean to somebody else. And
Right.
I think that's a big danger of synchromysticism. I think if you don't know that how personal your symbolscape is, which is what I teach people, then you kind of set yourself up for like these disasters of seeing dots connecting where they're not necessarily supposed to, or seeing meanings where there aren't necessarily meanings. And
Right.
you know, so really the spiritual path seems to be one of like fierce discernment and self-trust, which this whole world kind of like is against, you know, like that's my perception of it anyway. Some would disagree. Some would say, no, the world is always telling you follow your heart, but the heart is treacherous. You know, I'm just as biased as anyone else in how I think the world works, and you know what I'm protesting against at all times. So
No, I would agree. Yeah, and what you said about the free energy. What did Tyler Durden say in Fight Club? The things you own end up owning you. Great
yeah.
advice, and I wish I could hear it more often. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and
I had to leave so much stuff behind when I evacuated, and it was like I had spent so much time compiling this wardrobe of like all natural fibers, and I was so happy. I was like always hunting at the thrift store for like all cotton shirts or all linen shirts, and I finally had my wardrobe full of natural fibers, and then had to leave it all behind. And I was like, you know what? When I go back and get my car, I'm just going to donate all that stuff, because like other people lost literally everything. And like suddenly it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter if I'm wearing linen or not. Like maybe it does metaphysically, but also it doesn't. Like at the end of the day, like I don't think my whole spiritual trajectory is going to be dampened by a polyester shirt.
You're
I
gonna
hope
be
not.
reincarnated a million times for that one. I'll teach you a
What if
lesson.
it's recycled polyester?
Yeah, that's why there's no people wearing leisure suits in heaven, right?
No.
No Lululemon here.
Or Crocs.
Yeah,
Well, that I think we can all agree on, just for the aesthetic.
there you go. There you go. And what do you use? Obviously, the Ouroboros. That's another symbol you like too,
Oh,
and the serpent.
I wouldn't say I like it. I actually use it to illustrate the
Right, that you use.
oh yeah, I use the Ouroboros to illustrate how I believe the land of the dead operates. It's just like a
Mhm.
self-cannibalizing system of like
Right,
energy just getting recycled perpetually, and there's never anything new, right? And so it's a vampiric system. It's a parasitic system that feeds on itself indefinitely. Whereas free energy to me is energy that truly comes out of nowhere. It's totally new. It's totally unbound by that cyclical pattern. And these are, it's like, how do I explain what I have seen in the unseen realm? Like it's, you know, it can be very hard to explain free energy. It comes down to experiencing it, because like I've said, I've experienced those moments outside of time, outside of space, where things would seem to come out of nowhere when I needed them. There was no logical way that thing could have appeared in my reality except by free energy, or those moments outside of time, like precognition, like that dream I mentioned. Like we get these glimmers of the realms of free energy outside of this land of the dead. And I think that's another reason psychic conversations are so taboo. It's it's hard when you identify so strongly with the land of the dead, when you think that the material world, when you're Hylic, when you think that's how
Right.
it has to work, then psychic phenomena like are threatening to your whole sense of self, your whole grasp on reality. And to give an inch, it'll take a mile. Like if you give an inch and say, okay, maybe sometimes people can have precognitive dreams, then all of the rest of it is true too. Like you can't just like if one of those things is possible, all of them are possible. And so it is a total deconstruction of reality as you know it in favor of like this new paradigm where energy is not bound by time and space and the laws of physics. And so I think that's maybe another part of why psychic conversations are really taboo. And there's this like wall, there's this thought stopping rhetoric of like, oh, that's schizophrenic. I've come across that so many times. It's just a joke now. I think a lot of people in my online circles like joke about how they're schizo-pilled now, and they call themselves schizo. Yeah, like it's like, well, let's embrace it. If people are gonna say we're crazy, and no offense to anyone who actually has a diagnosis of that nature, more that the stigmatized term schizophrenia, like the colloquial use of the phrase, is very different from the reality of the actual mental illness. So often I've seen the word schizophrenia just used to shut down spiritual conversations. And that's a disservice to people who are actually struggling with like loss of coherence. And also it stops us from like finding out like just how wild and weird and crazy this world is, and how psychic we actually may be.
Exactly. And I like in one of your videos, you had a really good point where you're like, look, if science is already telling that this is a simulation, and there's part of us that is beyond a higher form of ourselves that's experiencing this right now, then this world is really a dream, whether it's our dream or Vishnu. It's some sort of imagination that's from a higher reality. So if this world's a dream, then isn't everything symbolical and representative of something? And I like that because when you start seeing that, you go, oh, yeah, everything is a symbol. Everything is a message, like trying to reach Neo. Everything's trying to reach Neo at every second. So I like
Oh
that.
yeah, constantly like in communication with itself. This like reality is always trying to figure itself out through these different vantage points. So like I'm a vantage point, and like I'm looking at you and you're a different vantage point. And I actually very much had that experience during Helene with my landmates. We were sitting in a triangle and we got high together. So that probably helped
Yes,
make
yes,
this perception possible. But
yes.
we were sitting there, we started talking about like fire. There was a candle, we were watching this candle and talking about like, what is fire, where does it come from, and like when there's nothing to burn, where does it go, like, and so it was getting really deep and metaphysical. And suddenly I looked up at both of them and I was like, oh my god, you're gods. Like it was just like it whatever veil had been there just like whoop ripped away, and I was looking at God and they were looking at me and they were like, oh my god, Alicen, I'm seeing through your eyes. I'm like, I'm seeing through your eyes. And like we were all just like this trinity of like this interreflective triangle. It was so cool. And that I feel like I was answering something you said and then I just got carried away there.
How
What?
about how life is a dream and
Oh
the
yes.
universe is talking to us through symbols at every second. And as you said, and I agree, the syncs and symbols are personal. They're just for us. But
Yeah.
it's always talking to us.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're always being given a chance to wake up, because one thing my dream practice has lent itself to is my understanding of symbolism and what I now call symbol vision. Like I basically have this permanent perception of everything being like a dream. And I'm not scared of it. Like I think a past version of me might have been like freaking out at the way I see the world now, but I really do see everything as symbolically meaningful. Conversations I have with people, it's as if I was like lucid in a dream, and I'm just like, okay, let me see what this dream character says, and like, figure out what in my own subconscious psyche is being brought to light for me to examine, and like through the vehicle of this other person. And That's like constant. And in fact, like I have a whole course about it. So if anyone wants to fuck around with dream vision, they can too. If they're feeling dangerous, then
Fuck around and find out,
I am a very fuck around and find out type of person. So I'm not for everyone in that regard. But, I see a cool question in the chat. Someone said, do you feel we chose to come here to the land of the dead? I do think more or less, yeah. I think because we're free, infinite beings, we can't be forced to do anything. I think we have free will. My belief in free will is pretty fundamental to everything else I believe. It's like a core concept I believe is at the root of everything. Like everything is a choice, whether it's a coerced choice, like, you know, with the light at the end of the tunnel, reincarnation traps in the afterlife, or, you know, what have you. At the end of the day, no one made your eternal free soul be here on earth. Like you chose it, whether you chose it knowingly or unknowingly, you did choose it. So I think taking sovereign responsibility for that is one of the major, I think it's a prerequisite. If you think of Earth as something you have to get out of, like a matrix, then you have to acknowledge that you freely came here to begin with, and you're not a victim of the archons. You know what I mean? Like we've been bullied by the archons, but ultimately we're more powerful than them, and that's actually really liberating to know, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We got the hoverboards and the car that can go back in time. Biff is he's not gonna mess with us before we're done. It is. And speaking, yeah, in archons, you speak of equivalent mind vampires and psychic vampires. Tell us about that, Alicen.
Oh
Because
yeah.
there's a very as above, so below. Like you said, parasites in our belly, parasites in society, parasites everywhere.
Yes. Oh yes. Okay, so I was essentially sleepwalking through life until the very beginning of 2020, before the COVID nonsense started. I I was like sitting on my bed thinking, what is love? Like, what is it actually? And I'd never sought the answer to that question before, but like asking you shall receive, that is a cosmic law. And so I asked, what is love? And like this light just like came on inside of me. And I suddenly could see all these metaphysical nuances that I couldn't see before, and like knowledge that I guess had already been there, but I was never conscious of it. And suddenly I knew a lot of things at once about the universe. And this I would describe as a spiritual awakening. It was like suddenly I understood that we are eternal souls and we have free will, and basically we've got to do our best to try to become loving, because love is free energy. So basically everything I talk about all came to me in this one explosion of gnosis. So one of the main things that came up, which was so strange at the time because I'd never thought about anything like this, I didn't know anything about parasites. I got all of this information about parasites all at once, and basically that parasite consciousness is at the root of evil. So the whole idea that there is such a thing as scarcity, and that you have to take from someone else in order to have what you need, is the foundation of evil. There is no such thing as scarcity. Nothing has to die for you to live. Nothing has to lose for you to gain. That is a feature of the land of the dead that is not true in the higher realms. So once you can accept that, like, actually, you already have everything you need, it's available to you instantly through the ether, and that is free energy, you get to graduate out of parasite consciousness. And but like basically understand that the world around you is full of parasite possessed people, so to speak. People who are essentially parasitic in that they think that they have to hurt others, and that it benefits them somehow. So yeah, basically all of that came to me at once, and I started to see it everywhere. It was like suddenly people who I think in the past I might have used the word narcissist for, I realize now it's like they're attempting to sustain themselves through like extracting provision from other people. And that is essentially a parasite or vampire mindset. So you would call them like energy vampires.
Right.
And then the physical, like condensed or like distilled manifestation of that is actual parasites. And so that's why it's like really essential on your growth journey, I think, to like eradicate actual physical parasites from your body, you're going to start seeing the whole world differently, because we do know that parasites do exert mind control over people. So parasites will make you want things that benefit them. So like they'll make you crave sugar, for example. So a lot of people who have sugar cravings, that can be a sign that you have a specific species of parasite infestation, things like that. So the more you cleanse your inner world physically and metaphysically, the more you're going to see you're not necessarily being victimized in the same way by these like vampiric forces, whether they're literal parasites or like people as parasites, you know? So that's a big one. And part of that extraction process is seeing the parts of yourself that are parasitic. And like, that is probably the hardest part of like this, like spiritual cleanse, so to speak, is acknowledging how you have been participating in the bloodshed cycle, right? How you have been taking from others in order to gain. And, it's a journey to get to the point where you're so self-sustained that you're pranic, that you don't need to take from the outside world anymore. So I think that's actually what's at the heart of the attempt people make to have like a cruelty-free lifestyle, so to speak. Like, I think that's what veganism thinks it's being, but then there's still, you know, plants are alive. And if you're killing them to eat, you are still being, in essence, a parasitic being who is taking life to sustain yours. So there's always like underneath it all, like the esoteric, like undercurrent is that somewhere deep down, we know that it's possible to not operate on that parasitic like wavelength anymore. It's just like, it's a journey of radical self-responsibility and saying, I am not entitled to the shedding of blood of other living beings. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, well said. Yeah, as above, so below. I guess we can say that it's a chain going into outer space, or as Russ says in True Detective, one big gutter going into outer space. So.
I'm sorry if I'm a little distracted by these comments. People are saying some really insightful things. I'm just
yeah, people in the comments are very good. I see Graham there, Phi Lightentis. Yeah. People good crowd, and rarely do we see any fights. Yeah, please.
Should I take that as a compliment? Somebody said I took some NZT48, and I just quickly looked that up, and it's like a brain booster. Are they saying I'm smart? I hope so.
It's just a chaotic comment. That's all.
Oh, well, we love chaos here. So
there you go. So you got plenty of it in the chat, you know.
Mr. Chaos Boy from
Chaos
Poland.
Boy. He doesn't know why we're specifically mentioning him. Like this whole show is for him, actually.
His whole life led to this moment, Chaos Boy. This is it. So.
Yeah, that's one problem with chaos. You know, time is gone, so you can't, join the YouTube podcast in time.
Thankfully, you can always catch it in the astral at any time.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do they call it today? We used to call it people who can never be on time. Now they call it time blindness.
Oh yeah, I've heard
it's
of
actually
that.
an affliction. Yeah, people are
really?
using it as a mental affliction. So.
And you know what? As annoying as that is, because I'm a very punctual person, I do understand. Like
I get it too. I have friends who have no male and female friends, just no concept. And when you live like I do in Mexican culture, no Portuguese culture, forget about it. So it's.
I kind of wish I wasn't such a stickler about time, because like if someone tells me let's meet at 11 a.m., I'm gonna be there 5 minutes early and like wait. And and like other people, they're like, oh, 15 minutes is nothing, 30 minutes is nothing, and then they're late. And I wish I could let go, like just like maybe that's part of my free energy journey. Maybe just saying
that's the next one. Yeah, just let go. You gotta let go. So.
Well, then you give up some love for the other person because the other person winds up sitting there, right? So you can't win,
Yeah, because it is like for me something. It's a sign of respect, of honoring, of love that person means a lot to me, and I will put the effort. So I see both sides, but I know some people mentally cannot understand time. They just can't. It's like.
Yeah, and I guess
they sit there and get dressed or something, and they just lose track of time.
And maybe there's a distinction to be made between like simply not understanding time and then transcending time to the point where you can make something happen instantly, like the turning of water into wine miracle is like this whole process that would normally be taken to make wine, which is a very time intensive process. If you've truly transcended time, you can turn water into wine and like skip that whole process. But if you're just late to stuff because you don't understand how time works, that's like a different, I wouldn't call it
Yeah, I
having
agree.
time. Yeah. It's
That's just a form of unconsciousness, right? Because
yeah,
if you
exactly.
know you have an appointment and like when this device has with these weird hands or these weird numbers, it comes to a certain thing and you know that other person is going to be there. Well, they're not aware of that. They don't pay attention to that. So it's a
Mm.
form of unconsciousness and they're not thinking about their friend that they're supposed to meet.
Yeah, I feel so bad for that one woman who told on herself in the comments like that she's always late. I hope we don't make you feel called out with this like
She
comment.
said she'd be late to her own funeral.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe don't die soon. Just push the funeral away further and
Yeah.
further and live as long as you can, then call that time blindness.
Exactly. And yeah, as we start to get close to the end, I also might want to remind the audience you also have a music channel, which is very good. Love your music and videos. And
Thank you.
you have a song called Pleroma. Tell us about
Ooh,
Pleroma.
Yes,
like that.
I do. So
My pleroma.
My ongoing personal practice is to avoid labels. I mean, they're rhetorically convenient. So like I'll call myself a chaos magician and such,
Right.
but I do try to maintain a general ideological openness. So I try not to settle on any one way of seeing. But all of that said, all those caveats, Gnosticism was huge in informing my perspective of the world. It was like the first alternative perspective I encountered after my spiritual awakening. So I was like reading the Gospel of Thomas and all of these things, and it was like, whoa, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And so I got really into basically Gnostic lore to if that's an appropriate word. And so I got really into this idea of the pleroma and how, again, I'm always comparing like, these alternative dimensions to our current dimension. And I find myself so frustrated when people insist to me that this is the only realm there is. There has to be dark and light. There has to be good and bad. And like, I can't shake this feeling that there are places where that's not true, where there are realms of just light. And I've always sort of known that in my soul. And then I feel like Gnosticism gave me permission to like consider that possible. And so I love the concept of the pleroma, this like totality of light. And so I made this music video. That's a whole saga too, just the making of that music video. But basically it's a music video full of paranormal footage of just people doing various psionic things like levitating or like yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't think all of the footage is real, but I do think at least a good sizable chunk of it is real, like legitimate paranormal footage. So it's just a song kind of just to remind people like, hey, we're so much more powerful than you might realize. And there's so much light in you waiting to come forth. So yeah, so Pleroma, the music video, I put my whole heart into it. I made it all myself. I made the costumes, I made the music, I did the editing and all of that. So please watch it.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And again, yeah, just go to her website. Again, it's on the show notes. But in case of you, some of you people are there watching on your tubes, alicengray.substack.com /P inside the serpent circuit. But if you do Alicen Gray, Jrey,
Yes.
it'll come up and you'll see all the links to social, YouTube, and all that good jazz. And as we get to the end, did you again, I will put on the show notes stuff to help you out, to help the community out for those who want to help out. Again, as long as we're conscious about it, do you want to do any sort of manifestation or advise people to do some sort of manifestation? What do you think, Al?
Oh, I mean, I would love to send some collective healing to the
Yeah.
areas affected by the hurricanes. Are we near the end of hurricane season? Are there more projected to be coming?
November is usually the end, yeah. So
Okay,
there could be some before it's all over, yes.
I wonder, would it be more useful to send healing in like advance, or like try to like reduce the power of any future hurricanes? Like what are we feeling here?
What do you think, Vance?
I think protect people from disaster,
Mm.
where that's kind of although
Yeah.
that kind of flies in the face of the lessons they could learn by being in disaster. Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's
Yeah. Oh man, I wonder, are there graceful, easy ways people could learn those same lessons that wouldn't make a life-altering storm necessary? Maybe
that'd be good.
it's worth a shot. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. All right. I'm a little nervous leading a guided meditation on the fly, but
Let's
let's
do it.
go.
I love these. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask everyone to please close your eyes. What comes up first is an absolute gratitude for everyone who's here and participating in this collective meditation. Even if you're watching later, you can still participate because this transcends time. This is going to affect everyone in question in all directions in time space. So, what I want everyone to do right now is first be calm and still in the knowing of just how powerful you are, that you absolutely do have the ability to influence the outer world from within your inner world. And knowing this, go ahead and bring to mind the southeastern United States affected by the hurricanes to any degree, whether it's to a disastrous degree or people being displaced or what have you. There's a lot of grief, there's a lot of hurt. It's very real for people. I'm asking everyone here to compassionately witness that. So instead of bypassing, we are being present with what is. And now, looking forward to what can be, I'm asking everyone to conjure up an image of the southeastern United States in peace, in harmony, repaired, buildings repaired, roads repaired, trees growing again, people moving back to those places, feeling safe, feeling empowered, feeling emboldened, communities coming back together, culture flourishing. See it, feel the joy, feel the harmony, feel the collaborative energy, feel the knowing of how powerful everyone is, that they're not worried about weather modification or anything like that. There is just a genuine joy and a freedom in the air. And I want us all to hold that for about a minute. See the southeastern United States animated with life and with joy and with love. And if you catch your thoughts wandering, just bring them right back. And we release the idea that lessons must be learned the hard way. And we forgive ourselves for learning the hard way when we could have learned through grace and ease how important love is. And so we practice love now for our sisters and brothers all over the country, with gratitude for this knowledge of just how powerful we are, even more so together. I think we can wrap up there.
Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Yes, amen. And Amun Ra, thank you for that. I think we'll get an egregore and some energy. It can only help. It will only help.
Yes, a big egregore of peace and love going to the southeastern United States.
There you go. There you go. And if individuals want to work with you one-on-one, was it through your Substack? I can.
So on my main website, Alicen.
Oh yeah, Alicen Gray.
Yeah, so right now I'm offering, so what I do is I help people see their life symbolically, as I was mentioning before. So interpreting life like a dream or like a grand work of art, to bring insight to any issue they may want to change. So that's something I do in like a one-on-one coaching container, just a one-off session. I hope to offer an ongoing coaching container having to do with identity, because I'm so into the study of like how we form our identity around our beliefs and then how that can become stagnating to our energy.
Right.
So teaching people how to let go of an identity and create a whole new sense of self, sort of like on command, that is a useful power indeed, and one that I would love to teach people. So yeah, for now it's just that one symbol speak offering. In the future there could be other coaching offerings, and yeah, and then I just have my music out there, I have my writing out there. There's just so much out there. I've been called a rabbit hole of a person. So if you just go on my website, you'll find some stuff, and then that'll lead to more stuff and more
There
stuff.
you
So have fun.
Yeah, check it out. It's all good stuff. All good stuff. Awesome. Well, we're at the end. For the audience, thanks for your great comments and ideas down there in the chat section. And Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Yes.
Oh, always love to keep company, and great to see you, Alicen.
Likewise.
Love your energy,
Oh.
and good luck with your good chaotic work out there.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and good luck getting back. And we hope that this wonderful new friendship of Jupiter and your mom continues unabated.
I wonder if she'll let me harass her for 1 second. Hold on. Hey, let's
She's
say
gonna
hi.
come back with her mom? No. Oh, look at Jupiter. Hey, guy, how you doing? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for I'm so glad that this happened. Thank you for giving space to my off the wall ideas. And thank you everyone for your very insightful, interesting comments and questions. I've got a lot to consider here.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you, Alicen, and hopefully we will do this sooner rather than later. Take care until the next time. To everybody else, have a good rest of your weekend. As I say, write your own gospel, live your own myth, run with those searching for the truth, avoid those who have found it. You are the final authority. Good night and take care, everybody. Thank you.
Be well.